Hello and welcome to this new edition of Inside Poland, our monthly program entirely devoted to the Polish presidency of the EU, which started on July 1st. Now, in today's program, we'll look at Poland's eastern borders. Prime Minister Donald Tusk recently declared he wants to use the Polish presidency to revive the EU's Eastern Partnership. Specifically, Warsaw wants to push for closer ties with Ukraine and Moldova, while dealing, of course, with Europe's pariah state, Belarus. Now, we'll discuss all this with my panel of guests. We'll also bring you a special report on Frontex, the EU's external border service, which is based in Warsaw. And last but not least, in our cultural sequence, we'll travel to the Polish capital to meet Julia Hartwig, one of the country's well-known poets. But first, let me introduce you to my guests, starting to my right with you, Iwona Ostapkowicz.
Hello.
Nice to have you on the set. You're a Polish journalist with the Paris-based weekly Courrier International. In front of you, George Frederick Dewsbury. Nice to have you back here at France 24. You're a researcher with the Center for Russian, Caucasian and Central European Studies, based also here in Paris. And Mr. Piotr Moszyński. Hello, Polish-born journalist with our radio partner, Radio France International. Now, as I said in the introduction, when you read the program of the Polish presidency, they tell you they want to revive the Eastern Partnership. Mr. Moszyński, what should we understand by this? Is it the case that Poland wants Ukraine and potentially also Moldova to join the European Union, or is it just a case of reviving interest in this region of Europe, which maybe has been a bit forgotten in Brussels?
Well, at the long term, I think the objective is really to make these countries joining the European Union, but nobody thinks at short term it would be possible. So Poland would like to prepare these countries to enter the European Union in building and helping them to build civil society, democratic structures, free market economy. They are very hard tasks in this region because don't forget that the society at this territory of the ancient Soviet republics is still a bit Sovieticized. This mentality is still present much more than in Poland, and Poles themselves have sometimes difficulties to understand what's happening in other countries and why they are hesitating. Poland never hesitated between Russia and European Union and doesn't understand why others do.
Iwona Ostapkowicz, when you are in Brussels, you realize that maybe there is some kind of, if not enlargement fatigue, at least a feeling that things went a bit too quickly. Now we know that Croatia should join in a couple of years, but is it also your assessment that Poland wants to prepare the way and that ultimately the goal is for Ukraine and Moldova to fully join?
I think the Polish politics now is to prepare this area to be ready in some times, but for the moment it's just not to have the black hole unstable without fancy governments which don't understand anything, and to impose some kind of European culture, political culture, and to prepare elites to be ready. So it means studies, to invite students to come to Poland, to Brussels, to Paris, to learn languages, to help free press, independent press, and so on and so on. And it will be long, and it's exactly to avoid the kind of situation that Europe had in the south of the continent.
Mr. Dewsbury, Poland is hoping to instill some change in this region of Europe. If there's one country where things, unfortunately, at the state level aren't changing, it has to be Belarus. And now Alexander Lukashenko, its authoritarian leader, who is often referred to as the last dictator of Europe, has very violently cracked down on the opposition. Europe responded by tightening sanctions, but what should and what can Poland do during this presidency to try and help the people of Belarus?
Well, it's interesting. Lukashenko is kind of like a bad ballet dancer. He was pivoting first toward the West and then toward Russia, because each time he went one way, he got money from that side, and then he goes back, he gets money from the other side. By cozying up to the West, we have a situation in which the Russians gave him all sorts of breaks on energy. Then he had his elections in December, which were thuggery. And now the West is shutting down against him, and the Russians understand that. They've cut his electricity, they've cut the loans for him. And Poland is very active out there. First of all, they've increased their amount of funds for the Belarus NGOs by $10 million. They fund a satellite channel, Belsat, which comes out of Poland into Belarus. They're hosting a conference on solidarity with Belarus. They had one in February. They're going to have another in which 40 nations collaborated. And there was an article in the New York Times yesterday that the Polish border guards are not stopping the smugglers of Belarus at all in continuing
So
their
it's even
work.
solidarity with the smugglers.
Yeah,
to a certain
yeah,
extent.
yeah.
Well, talking about the borders of Poland, you might not know it, but Frontex, which is the EU's external border service, is actually based in Warsaw. Our correspondent Gulliver Cragg, who's based in Warsaw himself, brought us this report.
When Italy faced a sudden increase of immigrant arrivals earlier this year, it called Warsaw. The Polish capital is home to Frontex, the EU's external borders agency.
We are coordinating assets and human resources deployed by 11 member states, plus Italy, which is the hosting member state. And this is by performing surveillance activities and also helping them to identify the migrants once they are in the Italian territory.
Aside from its assistance to Italy in the Mediterranean, Frontex runs a number of operations along the EU's eastern land border, including 5 focal points in Poland. Yet today, most illegal migrants reckon their best chance of overland entry to the EU is via Greece, not Poland.
Poland, because of bigger capacity to host those migrants, they put the migrants in reception centers until the Polish authorities get the travel documents to return back those migrants, while in Greece they are released very quickly.
Of course, that capacity to detain migrants depends on minimizing the numbers entering in the first place, so security at the border itself is key. Gabriela Vasilikioy is a Romanian document specialist seconded by Frontex to the Polish-Ukrainian border.
We share our knowledge and we are moving towards having the same procedures everywhere, because we should not just be border guards for our individual countries that we're from. We should do it for the whole European Union.
Most attempts to enter Poland illegally are made at checkpoints with forged or improperly obtained documents. 14,000 people were refused entry last year. In the past 5 years, the Polish Border Guard has received more than 40 million euros from the Union's External Borders Fund. Machines like this one for detecting false documents have helped tighten what is, since Poland joined it in 2007, the eastern border of the Schengen zone.
Foreigners know that at this border crossing point at least, it's very hard indeed to get through by presenting dodgy documents. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're seeing fewer and fewer such cases.
A pressing concern along this border is smuggling of goods as well as people, and that takes place both at checkpoints and away from them. This man is being questioned after he was caught receiving these cigarettes on this riverbank.
Often they just hold the cigarettes across the river in packets using a rope.
The narrow, winding Bug River that separates Poland and Ukraine doesn't look much like Fortress Europe. Yet it would seem the combination of regular patrols and vigilant locals is a sufficient deterrent. Last year, only 29 people were caught trying to enter the European Union by this particular route.
Piotr Moszyński, Poland hosts the headquarters of Frontex. Poland is also a member of the Schengen travel-free, passport-free zone. You've visited the border several times, the border between Poland and Ukraine. How is the situation there nowadays? It looks like things have improved greatly in terms of catching illegal immigrants.
Well, the situation changes. I visited the most impressive visit was just a few days after the introduction of Schengen frontier in Poland, and then all small commerce, all small exchanges were cut from one day to other. So the markets on the Polish side were always full of Ukrainians coming and selling everything they could sell. It was empty, completely empty. No car, no man, nobody. And Poles continued to go to Ukrainian markets with their proposals, but this created a very serious feeling of injustice on the Ukrainian side, and it created a very important political problem. That's why Poland has quickly introduced new laws who permitted the local movements, I think about 20 kilometers from every side of the frontier, to repair this political error.
Mrs. Ostapkovich, we know that Poland is a staunch supporter of Schengen at a time where, as we see, some countries are trying to undo some of the achievements of Schengen, certainly. What do you think Poland's message will be during this presidency when it comes to Schengen?
We still remember in Poland the Polish border with Germany before Poland was a democratic country, and those scenes on the border of frontier of Poland and Ukraine, it reminds me everything in this time. So
the sense of isolation.
Yes, and being in the outside world. So I think Poland, it's not the country of immigration. It's not hosting a lot of people going from other continents. The main foreigners are from the ex-Soviet Union republics, and estimation go from 40,000 to 400,000 people.
So there is no, let's call it, populist debate about Schengen?
No, I don't think so. There's no, it's not an issue for the moment. And of course, being in the Schengen zone, you must go with rules.
Mr.
Dewsbury,
it will be interesting to see, of course, what will happen when it comes to Romania and Bulgaria, because those two countries have been waiting to join Schengen for several years now. France and Germany have been very reluctant. What do you think? Are we likely to see any developments on this?
Well, of course, it has to happen sometime. But the whole issue of the fact that Bulgaria and Romania have no policy for their indigenous Roma, simply to send them off and receive the currency sent back, they have to develop their own policy toward their own people before something can happen.
Well, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there as we're running out of time, but I'd like to thank the three of you for taking part in this edition of Inside Poland. Now, it's almost a tradition in our program. We'll go straight to Warsaw to meet one of Poland's best-loved artists, this time meeting a poet. I'm in the center of Warsaw in the apartment of one of Poland's most prolific poets. Julia Hartwig published over 20 books on poetry. Mrs. Hartwig, thank you for having us here at your place. In your life, you witnessed many events. The German occupations during the war, the rise of communism, the fall of communism, and then came freedom, the European dream. How would you say Polish people have changed since the end of communism?
Well, it's big change from when you come out from the totalitarianism. So you feel free, and this freedom is something difficult too, because you have to choose your way. And also, I like it that the people go out of Poland, for instance, for vacation, because there is no problem of passport. You can't imagine how it was. It was really, you couldn't leave Poland because of the passport, and the passport was you got it when you were well seen.
Are you optimistic for your country?
Now the people are more constructive. They really want to live. They want to communicate. And one of the ways of communication is poetry. Imagine we had censorship, even in poetry. So now, and we have still new poets, new Polish poets. And the problem for me is always to keep the tradition alive, keep walking.
And precisely, I know you wrote a poem on Poland and Europe.
Absolutely.
Well, let's listen to your poem.
Jesteśmy dla Ciebie rezerwatem historii, Europo. Z naszymi staroświeckimi ideałami, z naszym odkurzonym skarbczykiem, z pieśniami, które śpiewamy. Wszystko, co mamy najlepszego, oddajemy na pożarcie smokowi gwałtu i przemocy. Młodych chłopców, piękne dziewczęta, najlepsze umysły, najbardziej obiecujące talenty, daninę kwiatów, krzyży, słów. Lekkomyślni dziedzice powagi, niewyświęceni krzewiciele nadziei, spadkobiercy ojczystej retoryki, w której mieścimy się jak ulał, choć wczoraj jeszcze wydawała nam się jakby przyciasna.
Thank you very much for having us here in your apartment in the center of Warsaw.
I am glad you came. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Dziękuję.
Well, that's it for this edition of Inside Poland, our special program entirely devoted to the Polish presidency of the European Union. We'll return next month at the same time on France 24. From all of us here in Warsaw, goodbye.